When the sleek black sedan skidded through the intersection and slammed into the guardrail mere feet from where Ethan Cole stood clutching his daughter's hand, he didn't think. He just moved. Glass shattered, metal screamed, and inside that crumpled luxury car sat a woman whose world was about to collide with his in ways neither could predict. Two strangers, two impossibly different lives, one split-second decision that would unravel everything they thought they knew about power, survival, and what it means to truly stand beside someone when the whole world is watching. If you're ready to see where this story goes, stick with me until the end, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this journey reaches. The rain came down in sheets that Thursday night, turning the cracked pavement outside Ethan Cole's apartment building into a patchwork of shallow lakes. He stood under the flickering awning of the convenience store across the street, one hand gripping a plastic bag of groceries, the other holding his daughter Maya's small fingers. She was 6, gap-toothed, wearing a purple jacket 2 sizes too big because it had been on clearance and would last her through the winter. "Daddy, I'm hungry," Maya said, tugging his hand. "I know, baby. We'll be home in 5 minutes." The light at the intersection turned red. Ethan stepped off the curb, pulling Maya close as a city bus roared past, spraying dirty water across the sidewalk. He'd been on his feet for 11 hours, 6 at the warehouse loading dock, 4 at the diner washing dishes, 1 more picking Maya up from his neighbor's apartment where she stayed after school. His back ached, his shoes were soaked through, but Maya was fed, safe, and smiling up at him like he'd hung the moon. That was enough. They were halfway across the street when he heard it, the high-pitched squeal of tires losing grip on wet asphalt. Ethan's head snapped left. Headlights, too bright, too fast, careening toward the intersection. The black sedan fishtailed, its rear end swinging wide as the driver overcorrected. For a split second, Ethan thought it would straighten out. Then the car clipped the corner of a parked truck and went into a full spin. "Maya, move!" He yanked her back onto the curb just as the sedan slammed into the metal guardrail separating the street from a shallow drainage ditch. The impact was brutal, a crunch of fiberglass and steel that echoed off the buildings. The car's front end crumpled like paper. The airbag deployed with a violent pop. Then, silence. Just the hiss of a busted radiator and the patter of rain on metal. Ethan set the grocery bag down. "Stay here." "Daddy." "Stay, right, here." He jogged toward the wreck, his breath fogging in the cold air. The sedan's driver's side door was jammed, the window spiderwebbed with cracks. Through the haze of deployed airbag dust, he could make out a figure slumped against the steering wheel. Dark hair, pale skin, blood on the temple. Ethan pulled on the door handle. Locked. He pounded on the window. "Hey, you okay in there?" No response. He looked around. The street was empty. No other cars, no pedestrians. Just him, a wrecked luxury sedan, and a woman who might be dying inside it. He glanced back at Maya. She stood where he'd left her, wide-eyed and shivering. "Damn it!" Ethan grabbed a chunk of broken asphalt from the gutter and slammed it against the window. The glass held. He hit it again, harder. On the third strike, the window shattered inward. He reached through, unlocked the door, and pulled it open. The woman inside was younger than he'd expected, maybe 30, dressed in a charcoal blazer and silk blouse that probably cost more than his rent. Her face was smudged with blood from a gash above her left eyebrow, but she was breathing, conscious, barely. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "Don't move," Ethan said, leaning in. "You might have a neck injury." "I'm fine," she muttered, but her voice was thin, shaky. She tried to sit up and immediately winced, her hand going to her ribs. "You're not fine. Stay still." "I said I'm fine." She pushed his hand away, her gaze sharpening despite the pain etched across her face. "Who the hell are you?" "The guy who just broke your window to make sure you didn't bleed out in your car." Ethan stepped back, giving her space. "You're welcome, by the way." She stared at him for a moment, then looked down at her hands. They were trembling. Blood dripped from her temple onto her collar. She touched the wound, flinched, then seemed to realize for the first time that she was hurt. "I need to get out of here," she said. "You need an ambulance." "No, no ambulance." She fumbled with her seatbelt, her fingers clumsy. "I can't. People will talk. Press. This whole thing will turn into a circus." Ethan frowned. "What are you talking about? Just help me out of the car." Against his better judgment, Ethan reached in and unbuckled her seatbelt. She leaned on him as she climbed out, her legs unsteady. Up close, she was taller than he'd thought, maybe 5'9" in heels, though one of those heels had snapped off in the crash. She kicked off the other shoe and stood there in the rain, barefoot, bleeding, and glaring at him like he'd personally inconvenienced her. "You really should see a doctor," Ethan said. "I'll be fine." "That's the second time you've said that, and you still look like you're about to pass out." "I don't pass out." "Great. Well, I'm not sticking around to watch you prove yourself wrong." Ethan turned to walk away. "Wait." He stopped. The woman took a breath, steadying herself against the car. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Thank you for pulling me out. I didn't mean to sound ungrateful." Ethan looked back at her. Rain plastered her dark hair to her face, but even soaked and injured, there was something sharp about her, something that didn't quite fit with the wreckage around her. Expensive watch, tailored clothes, a car that probably cost more than he'd make in 5 years. He didn't know who she was, but he knew she didn't belong in this part of town. "You got someone you can call?" he asked. She nodded. "My driver. He'll come get me." "Then call him." She reached into her blazer pocket, pulled out a phone with a cracked screen, and dialed. Ethan heard her speak in clipped professional tones, directions, instructions, no mention of the accident. When she hung up, she looked at him again. "He'll be here in 10 minutes. "Good. I'm leaving." "You can't just leave." "Watch me." "I don't even know your name." Ethan hesitated. Across the street, Maya was still standing under the awning, watching them. He could see the worry on her face even from a distance. "It's Ethan," he said finally. "Victoria." She extended a hand, then seemed to realize how absurd the gesture was given the circumstances. She lowered it. "Victoria Hale." The name didn't mean anything to him. He nodded, turned, and walked back to Maya. "Is she okay?" Maya asked as he picked up the grocery bag. "She'll live." She was bleeding a lot. Head wounds bleed a lot. It's not as bad as it looks. He took her hand again. "Come on, let's get you home." They left Victoria Hale standing in the rain beside her wrecked car, and Ethan didn't look back. 3 days later, Ethan was halfway through his shift at the warehouse when his supervisor, a balding man named Rick with a perpetual coffee stain on his shirt, called him into the office. "You got a visitor," Rick said, jerking his thumb toward the front gate. Ethan frowned. "What kind of visitor?" "The kind that shows up in a town car and asks for you by name. I don't know, man. Just go deal with it." Ethan set down the box he'd been lifting and walked toward the front of the warehouse. Through the chain-link fence, he could see a sleek black car idling in the parking lot. The driver, a tall man in a suit, stood beside the rear passenger door. When Ethan approached, the driver opened the door. Victoria Hale stepped out. She looked different than she had 3 nights ago. No blood, no torn clothes. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat twist, and she wore a slate gray dress that probably cost more than Ethan's car, if he'd had a car. The cut above her eyebrow had been stitched and covered with a small bandage, barely visible. She looked polished, put together, completely out of place standing in a warehouse parking lot. "Ethan Cole?" she said. "Yeah, how'd you find me? I have resources." She stepped closer to the fence. "I wanted to thank you properly for what you did." "You already thanked me." "I was in shock. I didn't handle it well." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you." Ethan didn't take it. "What is it?" "A check, $20,000. He stared at her. "You're kidding." "I don't kid about money." "I'm not taking your money." "Why not?" "Because I didn't pull you out of that car for a payoff. I did it because you were hurt, and I was there. That's it." Victoria tilted her head, studying him like he was some kind of puzzle she hadn't encountered before. "Most people would take the money." "I'm not most people." "Clearly." She slipped the envelope back into her purse. "Then let me buy you dinner." "I don't need dinner." "Everyone needs dinner." "I've got plans." "Cancel them." Ethan shook his head. "Look, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in whatever this is. You want to thank me? Send a card. We're done here." He turned to walk away. "I'm offering you a job," Victoria said. Ethan stopped. "What? A job?" "At my company. I need someone I can trust, and you've already proven you're not motivated by money. which makes you a rarity in my world. She stepped closer to the fence. I run a private equity firm, Hale Capital. We manage portfolios, broker deals, move markets. I need someone who can handle logistics, security, personal coordination. The pay is 6 figures, full benefits, and you'd be working directly for me. Ethan turned back to face her. You don't even know me. I know enough. You know I pulled you out of a car. That's it. And I know you didn't ask for anything in return. That tells me more than a resume ever could. She held his gaze. Think about it. You're working 2 jobs, barely keeping your head above water. I'm offering you a way out. I don't need saving. Everyone needs saving, Ethan. Some people are just too stubborn to admit it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan could feel Rick watching from the office window, could feel the weight of the offer pressing down on him like a hand on his chest. 6 figures. Benefits. A way out. I've got a daughter, he said finally. I know. How do you... I told you. I have resources. Victoria's expression softened slightly. I'm not asking you to abandon her. I'm asking you to give her a better life. Ethan looked past her, at the town car, at the driver standing at attention like some kind of soldier. This wasn't his world. He didn't belong in boardrooms and town cars. He belonged here, in the warehouse, loading boxes and keeping his head down. But Maya deserved better than that. I'll think about it, he said. Victoria smiled, a small, controlled curve of her lips that didn't quite reach her eyes. Good. Here's my card. Call me when you're ready. She handed him a business card through the fence. Thick cardstock, embossed lettering. Victoria Hale, CEO, Hale Capital. A phone number, nothing else. Don't take too long, she said. Opportunities like this don't wait. She got back into the town car and the driver closed the door behind her. Ethan watched as the car pulled out of the parking lot and disappeared down the street. He looked down at the card in his hand, then slipped it into his pocket. Rick appeared at his shoulder. Who the hell was that? No idea, Ethan said. She offering you a job? Yeah. You gonna take it? Ethan didn't answer. He just walked back into the warehouse and got back to work. That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan sat at the tiny kitchen table in their apartment and stared at Victoria Hale's business card. He'd Googled her. Big mistake. The search results were overwhelming. Forbes profiles, Wall Street Journal features, society page photos. Victoria Hale wasn't just wealthy. She was a titan, a self-made billionaire who'd built Hale Capital from the ground up after a bitter split from her family's legacy firm. 30 years old and already more powerful than most people twice her age. And she wanted to hire him. A guy who'd barely finished community college. A guy who spent his days hauling freight and his nights scrubbing dishes. It didn't make sense. He picked up his phone, stared at her number for a long time, then set it back down. Not yet. He needed to think. Needed to figure out what the catch was. Because there was always a catch. A knock on the door pulled him out of his thoughts. He got up, glanced through the peephole, and saw his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, standing in the hallway. He opened the door. Mrs. Chen? Everything okay? I wanted to talk to you about Maya, she said, her voice low. Can I come in? Ethan stepped aside, and she walked into the apartment. Mrs. Chen was in her 70s, a tiny woman with steel gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She'd been watching Maya after school for the past 2 years, refusing to take more than $20 a week despite Ethan's protests. Is something wrong? Ethan asked. Not wrong exactly. Mrs. Chen sat down at the table, folding her hands in her lap. But I need to tell you something. My daughter called. She wants me to come live with her in California. She's pregnant and she needs help with the baby. Ethan's stomach dropped. When? End of the month. That's 2 weeks. I know. I'm sorry, Ethan. I wouldn't leave you in a bind if I had a choice, but no, I get it. Family comes first. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to keep his voice steady. I'll figure something out. Mrs. Chen reached across the table and squeezed his hand. You're a good father. Maya's lucky to have you. After she left, Ethan sat alone in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Without Mrs. Chen, he'd have to find daycare. Daycare cost money he didn't have. He could cut back on groceries, skip a few meals, but even that wouldn't be enough. He'd have to quit one of his jobs. Maybe both. Maybe. He picked up his phone and dialed Victoria Hale's number before he could talk himself out of it. She answered on the second ring. "Ethan, I was wondering when I'd hear from you." "I'll take the job," he said. "Excellent. When can you start?" "Monday." "Perfect. I'll have my assistant send over the paperwork. We'll need to run a background check, but that's just a formality." She paused. "You're making the right choice." "Yeah," Ethan said. "I hope so." Tukis. Monday morning, Ethan stood outside the Hale Capitol building in downtown Seattle, staring up at the glass and steel tower that stretched 30 stories into the sky. He dropped Maya off at school, kissed her forehead, and promised her things were about to get better. Now, standing here in the only suit he owned, a thrift store number that didn't quite fit, he wasn't so sure. He walked through the revolving doors and into a lobby that looked like something out of a magazine. Marble floors, modern art on the walls, a reception desk staffed by a woman in a headset who looked like she could kill him with her eyes if he said the wrong thing. "Ethan Cole," he said. "I'm here to see Victoria Hale." The receptionist typed something into her computer, then nodded. 32nd floor. Elevators are to your right." The elevator ride up was silent except for the faint hum of machinery. When the doors opened, Ethan stepped into a sleek, minimalist office space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Everything was white, chrome, and glass. A young man in a crisp shirt and tie approached him. "Mr. Cole? I'm Jason, Miss Hale's assistant. Follow me." They walked past rows of desks where people in expensive suits talked on phones and typed on laptops. No one looked up. No one acknowledged him. Ethan felt like a ghost. Jason stopped in front of a set of double doors. "Ms. Hale is in a meeting, but she'll be with you shortly. You can wait in her office." He opened the doors and Ethan stepped inside. Victoria's office was massive, easily the size of his entire apartment. A glass desk sat near the windows, flanked by 2 leather chairs. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with legal texts and financial reports. The other wall was bare except for a single piece of art, a stark black and white photograph of a city skyline at night. Ethan walked to the window and looked down at the streets below. From up here, everything looked small, manageable, like the whole world was just a game board waiting to be rearranged. "Impressive, isn't it?" He turned. Victoria stood in the doorway, dressed in a navy suit that fit her like armor. She closed the door behind her and walked to the desk. "Most people feel small up here," she said, setting down a leather portfolio. "But you don't strike me as the type who shrinks in the face of height." "I'm not afraid of heights," Ethan said. "I'm just not used to being this far off the ground." "You'll get used to it." She gestured to one of the chairs. "Sit." He sat. She remained standing, leaning against the desk with her arms crossed. "Let's be clear about something," she said. "I didn't hire you because I felt sorry for you. I hired you because you have something I need: integrity. In this business, that's rarer than gold. People will lie, cheat, and backstab their way to the top. I need someone who won't." "And you think that's me?" "I know it is. You proved it when you turned down my money." She leaned forward slightly. "But here's the thing, Ethan. Integrity alone isn't enough. You're going to be working in a world where the stakes are high and the rules are flexible. You're going to see things that make you uncomfortable, hear things you don't agree with, and you're going to have to keep your mouth shut and do your job. Can you handle that?" Ethan met her gaze. "I've been keeping my mouth shut my whole life. I think I can manage." Victoria smiled. "Good. Then let's get started." The first week was a blur. Ethan spent his days shadowing Victoria, learning the rhythms of her world. Meetings with investors, conference calls with lawyers, lunches with CEOs who smiled like sharks and talked in coded language he barely understood. He took notes, stayed quiet, and tried not to look as lost as he felt. At night, he went home to Maya, helped her with homework, made dinner, and tucked her into bed. Then he stayed up late reading the files Victoria had given him: financial reports, market analyses, profiles of rival firms. It was like learning a new language. By Friday, he was exhausted. "You're doing well," Victoria said as they left the office that evening. "Better than I expected. I'm barely keeping up." "You're keeping up fine. Most people would have quit by now." They walked to the elevator together. The building was mostly empty, just a few stragglers working late. The elevator doors opened and they stepped inside. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said as the elevator descended. "Go ahead." "Why me? You could have hired anyone, someone with experience, connections, A degree from some fancy school? Why a guy who loads boxes for a living? Victoria was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd heard it before. Because everyone else wants something from me, she said. Money, status, access. You didn't. You just did the right thing and walked away. That's rare. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened and they stepped out into the cool evening air. Victoria's driver was waiting by the curb. I'll see you Monday, she said. Yeah, Monday. She got into the car and Ethan watched it pull away. Then he walked to the bus stop, his mind racing. He didn't know what he'd gotten himself into, didn't know if he could survive in Victoria's world. But for the first time in years, he felt like maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. He just hoped he was ready for it. 2 weeks into the job, Ethan got his first real test. Victoria called him into her office on a Tuesday morning and handed him a file. I need you to deliver this to Michael Reeves. He's the CFO of Arcadia Industries. They're based in Bellevue. You'll take the town car. Ethan opened the file. Inside were documents marked confidential. He didn't understand half the terminology, but he recognized enough to know this was important. What is this? A merger proposal. Arcadia's board is voting on it next week. Reeves needs to see these numbers before the meeting. Why not just email them? Because emails can be intercepted, hacked, leaked. This stays offline. She looked at him. Can you handle it? Yeah, I can handle it. The drive to Bellevue took 40 minutes. Ethan sat in the back of the town car, the file on his lap, watching the city blur past the tinted windows. When they arrived at Arcadia's headquarters, the driver pulled up to the front entrance. Wait here, Ethan said. Inside, the building was just as sleek as Hale Capital, but colder, more corporate. Ethan approached the reception desk and asked for Michael Reeves. The receptionist made a call, then directed him to the 14th floor. Reeves was waiting in a conference room, a middle-aged man in a suit that looked like it cost more than Ethan's entire wardrobe. He stood when Ethan entered. You must be from Hale Capital, Reeves said, extending a hand. Ethan shook it. Ethan Cole. Miss Hale asked me to deliver this. He handed over the file. Reeves opened it, scanned the first few pages, then nodded. Tell Victoria we'll review it and get back to her by end of week. Will do. Ethan turned to leave, but Reeves spoke again. You're new, aren't you? Ethan stopped. Is it that obvious? Let's just say you don't look like the usual Hale Capital type. Reeves set the file down. Word of advice, watch your back in that place. Victoria's brilliant, but she's also ruthless. People who get too close to her tend to get burned. I'll keep that in mind. I mean it. She's made a lot of enemies, and enemies have a way of striking when you least expect it. Ethan left the building without responding. He got back into the town car and the driver pulled away from the curb. As they drove back toward downtown, Ethan couldn't shake Reeves's words. Enemies, ruthless, burned. What the hell had he gotten himself into? That night, Ethan sat across from Maya at their kitchen table, watching her draw a picture of a house with crayons. She'd been quieter than usual lately, and he could tell something was bothering her. Everything okay, kiddo? He asked. Maya looked up. Daddy, are we going to move? Move? Why would we move? Because you have a new job. And Mrs. Chen said people with new jobs sometimes move to bigger houses. Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. We're not moving. This is our home. But what if your job makes you go away? Like Mommy did? The question hit him like a punch to the gut. Maya's mother, Claire, had left when Maya was 2. Just walked out one day and never came back. No note. No explanation. Just gone. Ethan had spent years trying to explain it to Maya in a way that didn't break her heart. But the truth was, he didn't understand it himself. I'm not going anywhere, he said. I promise. You promise? I promise. Maya smiled and went back to her drawing. Ethan watched her for a long time, the weight of his promise settling over him like a stone. He couldn't fail her. Not now. Not ever. Even if it meant surviving in a world he didn't understand. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later. Ethan was in Victoria's office reviewing schedules for the week when her assistant, Jason, burst through the door. We have a problem, Jason said. Victoria looked up sharply. What kind of problem? Someone leaked the Arcadia merger proposal to the press. It's all over the financial blogs. The board is furious. Victoria's expression didn't change, but Ethan could see the tension in her jaw. Who leaked it? We don't know yet. Find out. Now. Jason left. Victoria stood and walked to the window, her hands clasped behind her back. For a long moment, she didn't speak. This is what I was talking about, she said finally. The rules in this world are flexible. Someone just broke them. What are you going to do? Ethan asked. Fix it. She turned to face him. And you're going to help me. Victoria's plan was simple in theory, brutal in execution. She needed to find the leak, plug it, and do enough damage control to salvage the Arcadia deal before the board pulled out entirely. That meant working 18-hour days, combing through email logs, phone records, and security footage. It meant interrogating her own staff, people she'd trusted for years, looking for cracks in their loyalty. Ethan had never seen her like this. The polished veneer she wore in meetings was gone, replaced by something sharper, colder. She moved through the office like a general preparing for war, her voice clipped and precise as she issued orders. People scattered when she walked past. Pull the server logs from the last 2 weeks, she told Jason. I want to know every file that was accessed, by whom, and when. That's going to take days. Then you better start now. Jason nodded and hurried off. Victoria turned to Ethan. You're with me. We're going to Arcadia. Now. Yes, now. Reeves is threatening to kill the deal unless I can prove this wasn't deliberate sabotage on my end. I need to look him in the eye and make him believe me. They took the town car. The drive to Bellevue was tense, silent except for the hum of the engine and the occasional buzz of Victoria's phone. She answered emails with one hand, her jaw tight, her fingers moving across the screen with mechanical precision. Ethan watched her from the corner of his eye, trying to reconcile this version of her with the woman who'd handed him a business card in a warehouse parking lot. You okay? He asked. She didn't look up. I'm fine. You don't look fine. I don't pay you to psychoanalyze me, Ethan. I pay you to do your job. He leaned back in his seat and stared out the window. The city blurred past, gray and wet under a blanket of clouds. He'd been working for Victoria for almost a month now, and he still couldn't figure her out. One minute she was offering him opportunities, treating him like he mattered. The next, she shut down completely, retreating behind walls he couldn't scale. When they arrived at Arcadia, Reeves was waiting in the same conference room where Ethan had delivered the file weeks earlier. This time Reeves wasn't alone. 2 other men sat at the table, one in his 50s with silver hair and a sharp suit, the other younger, maybe 35, with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. Victoria, Reeves said, standing, thanks for coming. Let's skip the pleasantries, Michael. You wanted to meet. We're here. Talk. Reeves gestured to the 2 men. This is David Klein, our general counsel, and Thomas Ward, head of corporate strategy. Victoria shook their hands without warmth. Gentlemen, Klein leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. We have concerns about the leak, specifically how it happened and whether it came from your end. It didn't, Victoria said. You sound certain. I am. My team is airtight. If there's a leak, it's on your side. Ward laughed, a dry, humorless sound. That's a bold accusation. It's not an accusation. It's a fact. The file never left my possession until Ethan delivered it to Michael. After that, it was out of my hands. Klein's gaze shifted to Ethan. And who exactly is Ethan? Someone I trust, Victoria said. That's not an answer. Ethan felt the weight of their stares. He kept his expression neutral, his hands folded on the table. Ward was still smiling that empty smile, and Klein looked like he was trying to decide whether Ethan was a threat or just a pawn. Ethan Cole, Victoria continued. He's on my personal team. He delivered the file directly to Michael. No stops, no detours. If you're implying he had something to do with the leak, you're wasting your time. We're not implying anything, Reeves said. We're just trying to understand how this happened. Then look at your own people, because mine are clean. The room went quiet. Klein exchanged a glance with Ward, then turned back to Victoria. We'll need proof. You'll get it, but in the meantime, I expect this deal to stay on track. The board votes next week. If you pull out now, you'll lose the best offer you're going to get. Or we could walk away and avoid the PR nightmare you've dragged us into. Victoria leaned forward, her voice dropping to a register that was almost dangerous. You want to walk away? Fine. But don't pretend this is about the leak. This is about leverage. You're trying to renegotiate terms because you think I'm vulnerable. But here's the thing, David. I'm not. I've got 3 other firms lined up who'd kill for this deal. So either we move forward as planned, or I walk out of here and take my offer with me. Your choice. Klein didn't blink. You're bluffing. Try me. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Reeves cleared his throat. Let's take a breath. Victoria, we're not trying to blow up the deal. We just need assurances. You'll have them by tomorrow, Victoria said, standing. And when I prove the leak came from your end, I expect an apology. She walked out of the room without waiting for a response. Ethan followed, catching up to her in the hallway. You really think it's them? He asked. I know it is. Reeves is nervous, but Klein and Ward, they're playing games. One of them leaked it to tank the deal or force me to lower the price. So what now? Now we prove it. Back at Hale Capital, Victoria set Ethan to work pulling together a timeline. Every interaction with Arcadia, every email, every phone call. She wanted dates, times, names, anything that could point to where the leak originated. Ethan spent the next 12 hours hunched over his desk, cross-referencing documents and comparing notes. His eyes burned, his back ached, but he kept going. Around midnight, Jason appeared with coffee and a look of grim determination. Found something, Jason said, setting a laptop on Ethan's desk. One of Arcadia's junior analysts accessed the file 20 minutes before the leak went live. His name is Eric Dane. He's Ward's assistant. Ethan looked at the screen. There it was. Login credentials, timestamps, IP addresses, a digital trail leading straight to Arcadia. Does Victoria know? Not yet. I wanted to confirm it first, but yeah, this is solid. Good. Let's tell her. They found Victoria in her office, still dressed in the same suit she'd worn that morning. She looked exhausted, her hair slightly mussed, her eyes shadowed. But when Jason showed her the evidence, something shifted in her expression. Not relief exactly, more like vindication. Ward's assistant, she said, reading the screen. So Ward orchestrated it. Looks that way, Jason said. Send this to Reeves. Copy Klein. Tell them if they don't fire Ward and Dane by tomorrow morning, I'm pulling the deal and going public with the evidence. Jason hesitated. That's a pretty aggressive move. It's the only move. They tried to screw me. Now they pay for it. Jason left to send the email. Victoria leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, she looked at Ethan. You should go home. Get some sleep. I'm fine. You've been here for 14 hours. Go home to your daughter. Ethan wanted to argue, but she was right. He hadn't seen Maya since that morning, and he'd promised Mrs. Chen he'd be back by 10. It was already past midnight. You sure? I'm sure. I'll handle the rest. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, he caught one last glimpse of Victoria sitting alone in her office, the city lights glowing behind her like a halo. She looked small, fragile, nothing like the woman who'd faced down Klein and Ward just hours earlier. The bus ride home was quiet, just a handful of other passengers scattered across the seats. Ethan stared out the window, watching the city roll past. A month ago, he'd been loading boxes and washing dishes, barely scraping by. Now he was caught up in corporate espionage, merger deals, and power plays he barely understood. He didn't know if he belonged in this world, didn't know if he ever would, but he couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when Victoria needed him. When he got home, Mrs. Chen was asleep on the couch, the TV flickering softly in the dark. He woke her gently, apologized for being late, and walked her back to her apartment. Then he checked on Maya. She was curled up under her blankets, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. He kissed her forehead and whispered a promise he hoped he could keep. I'm here, baby. I'm not going anywhere. By the time Victoria's email landed in Reeves's inbox the next morning, the damage was done. Ward tried to deny it, but the evidence was ironclad. Arcadia's board held an emergency meeting and voted to terminate Ward and Dane within 24 hours. Reeves called Victoria personally to apologize, and the merger deal moved forward as planned. It should have felt like a victory. But when Ethan walked into the office that morning, the atmosphere was tense. People whispered in corners, glances were exchanged. Something had shifted. What's going on? Ethan asked Jason. Jason glanced around, then lowered his voice. Word got out about the Arcadia thing. Some of the senior staff are saying Victoria's getting too aggressive, that she's making enemies she can't afford. Who's saying that? Doesn't matter. Point is, people are nervous, and when people get nervous, they start looking for exits. Ethan frowned. You think someone's going to leave? I think someone already did. Before Ethan could ask what he meant, Victoria's door opened and she stepped out. She looked composed, put together, but there was a tightness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. Ethan, my office. Now. He followed her inside. She closed the door and leaned against her desk, arms crossed. Marcus quit, she said. Who's Marcus? Head of acquisitions, one of my best people. He handed in his resignation this morning. Said he's taking a position with Klein's firm. Ethan's stomach sank. Klein from Arcadia? The same. He's poaching my staff, and Marcus is just the first. I'm going to lose more. Why would they leave? Because they're scared. They think I'm making too many enemies, taking too many risks. And maybe they're right. She looked at him. You ever wonder if you're on the wrong side of a fight? All the time. She smiled faintly. At least you're honest. So what are you going to do? Keep fighting. What else can I do? She pushed off the desk. But I'm going to need your help. Marcus knew a lot about my operations. Client lists, deal structures, strategy. If he takes that information to Klein, it could hurt us. I need you to go through his files, figure out what he had access to, and lock it down. I'm not sure I'm qualified. You're the only person I trust right now. Everyone else could be compromised. Her voice softened. I know I'm asking a lot, but I wouldn't ask if I didn't think you could handle it. Ethan nodded. I'll do it. Good. Start with his computer. Jason will get you the login credentials. The next few days were a blur of spreadsheets, contracts, and emails. Ethan worked late into the night, cataloging everything Marcus had touched, every client he'd contacted, every deal he'd brokered. It was tedious, exhausting work, but it kept him focused, kept him from thinking too much about what was happening around him. Meanwhile, Victoria was fighting on multiple fronts. 2 more senior staffers resigned. Clients started asking questions. Rumors spread that Hale Capital was unstable, that Victoria was losing control. She pushed back hard, meeting with clients, reassuring investors, doing everything she could to hold the ship together. But Ethan could see the cracks forming. One night, after everyone else had gone home, he found her in her office staring out the window. She didn't turn when he walked in. You should go home, she said. So should you. I will, in a minute. He walked to the window and stood beside her. The city stretched out below, a grid of lights and shadows. You ever think about walking away? He asked. She laughed softly. Every day, but I can't. This company is all I have. If I lose it, I lose everything. You've got more than this. Do I? She looked at him. I don't have a family. Don't have friends I can trust. Everyone in my life either works for me or wants something from me. This company is the only thing that's mine. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He thought about Maya, about the way she looked at him like he was her whole world. He couldn't imagine living without that. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be. I chose this. And I'd choose it again. She turned back to the window. But sometimes I wonder what it would have been like to choose something else. They stood there in silence for a long time. Then Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and her expression hardened. What is it? Ethan asked. An email. From an anonymous sender. She held up the phone. They're threatening to release confidential client information unless I pay them $2 million. What? Who would? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. She grabbed her coat. Come on, we're going to the police. The precinct was nearly empty when they arrived. A board desk sergeant took their statement, asked a few questions, then told them a detective would follow up in the morning. Victoria wasn't satisfied. This is extortion, she said. Someone is threatening my business. I need this dealt with now. Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but we have procedures. To hell with your procedures. I want to speak to someone in charge. The sergeant sighed and picked up the phone. 10 minutes later, a detective appeared. A woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a coffee-stained blouse. Her name was Linda Ortiz, and she listened to Victoria's story with the kind of patience that came from hearing 1,000 complaints just like it. I'll look into it, Ortiz said when Victoria finished. But I have to be honest with you, Ms. Hale. Anonymous emails are hard to trace. Unless they slip up, there's not much we can do. So I'm just supposed to wait? Or pay? That's usually what these people are counting on. Victoria's jaw tightened. I'm not paying. Then we'll do what we can. Ortiz handed her a card. Call me if you get another message. In the meantime, beef up your security, change your passwords, and watch your back. They left the precinct and stood on the sidewalk outside, the cold night air biting at their skin. Victoria stared at Ortiz's card, then crumpled it in her fist. This is bullshit, she said. Maybe, but she's right about one thing. You need to be careful. I'm always careful. Are you? Ethan looked at her. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're making a lot of enemies and not enough friends. I don't need friends. I need results. And what happens when the results run out? She didn't answer. She just walked to the town car and got in, leaving Ethan standing on the sidewalk. He watched the car pull away, then started the long walk to the bus stop. When he got home, Maya was already asleep. He sat on the edge of her bed, watching her breathe, and wondered how long he could keep doing this. How long he could balance his daughter's world and Victoria's. How long before one of them broke. The next morning, Victoria called an emergency staff meeting. Everyone gathered in the main conference room, their faces tense and uncertain. Victoria stood at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. I know there have been rumors, she began, about instability, about departures, about threats. I'm here to tell you that those rumors are true. We are under attack. Competitors are trying to poach our talent, sabotage our deals, and undermine our reputation. But here's what they don't understand. We don't break. We don't run. We fight. She paused, letting the words settle. Some of you are scared. I get it. This business is brutal. But if you're looking for an easy path, you're in the wrong place. Hale Capital was built on taking risks, on going where others won't. And we're not stopping now. So if you want to stay, stay. But if you're thinking about jumping ship, do it now, because I need people who are all in. No one moved. No one spoke. Then slowly, one person started clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the whole room was applauding. It wasn't enthusiasm exactly. It was something closer to defiance, a refusal to go down without a fight. Victoria nodded, acknowledging the gesture, then dismissed the meeting. As people filed out, Ethan lingered. That was a hell of a speech, he said. It needed to be said. You really think they'll stay? Some will, some won't. But the ones who stay will be the ones worth keeping. She looked at him. What about you? You staying? I'm here, aren't I? For now, but this is only going to get harder. I know. And you're still in? Ethan thought about Maya, about the promise he'd made to her, about the life he was trying to build. Yeah, he said. I'm still in. Victoria smiled, a real smile this time, not the controlled curve she wore in meetings. Good, because I'm going to need you. Over the next week, the threats escalated. More anonymous emails, photos of Victoria leaving the office, a message that included Maya's school address. That one sent Ethan into a panic. He called the school, spoke to the principal, demanded increased security. Then he confronted Victoria. They know about my daughter, he said, barging into her office. Victoria looked up from her laptop. I know. You know? That's all you have to say? I've already arranged for private security. There's a team watching the school. Maya's safe. She shouldn't need a security team. She's 6 years old. I know, and I'm sorry. But this is the reality we're dealing with. Ethan paced the room, his hands shaking. This is insane. Whoever's doing this, they're not just going after you. They're going after everyone around you. Which is why we need to end this fast. And how do you plan to do that? I'm working on it. That's not good enough. Victoria stood, her voice rising to match his. What do you want me to say, Ethan? That I have all the answers? I don't. But I'm doing everything I can to protect you and Maya. So either trust me or walk away. Your choice. They stared at each other, the tension crackling between them. Then Ethan exhaled, the fight draining out of him. I can't walk away, he said quietly. Not now. Then help me fix this. He nodded. What do you need? I need you to dig into Marcus's files again. See if there's anything we missed. Emails, phone records, anything that might tell us who he's working with. Ethan spent the rest of the day combing through data, and late that night he found it, a series of encrypted emails between Marcus and an offshore account. The messages were vague, but one name kept appearing, Klein. He brought it to Victoria. "This proves Klein's involved," she said, reading the messages. "He's not just poaching staff, he's orchestrating the whole thing." "So what now?" "Now we hit back." Victoria made a call. 20 minutes later, her lawyer arrived, a sharp-eyed woman named Rachel Torres, who looked like she could argue a case in her sleep. They spent hours strategizing, building a case for corporate espionage, harassment, extortion. By the time the sun came up, they had a plan. And Ethan knew, watching Victoria work, that this fight was far from over. Rachel Torres didn't waste time. By 9 the next morning, she'd filed a cease and desist letter against Klein's firm, demanding they stop all contact with former Hale Capital employees and threatening legal action for corporate espionage. The letter was aggressive, detailed, and designed to send a message. Victoria wasn't backing down. Klein's response came within hours. Not through his lawyer, through the press. Ethan was in the break room grabbing coffee when Jason rushed in, tablet in hand. "You need to see this." The screen showed a news article from a major financial blog. The headline read, "Hale Capital in Crisis, Internal Turmoil and Alleged Misconduct." Ethan scanned the text. Anonymous sources. Claims of a toxic work environment. Accusations that Victoria had stolen proprietary information from her family's firm when she'd left to start her own company 5 years ago. "This is a hit piece," Ethan said. It's worse than that. Look at the byline." The article was written by Connor Hayes, a well-known investigative journalist with a reputation for taking down corporate executives. If Hayes was involved, this wasn't just gossip. This was a coordinated attack. Ethan found Victoria in her office, already on the phone with Rachel. Her voice was controlled, but he could hear the edge beneath it. "I don't care what it costs. I want a retraction, and I want to know who fed Hayes this story." She paused, listening. "Then find out. Subpoena his sources if you have to." Another pause. "Fine. Do it." She hung up and looked at Ethan. "You saw the article." "Yeah. It's Klein. Has to be. He's trying to destroy my reputation before I can build a case against him." "Is any of it true? The stuff about your family's firm?" Victoria's expression hardened. "When I left Hale Industries, I didn't take anything that wasn't mine. My father and brother wanted to keep me locked in a box, doing deals they approved, dating men they chose, living a life they designed. So I walked away and built something on my own. They never forgave me for it. And now Klein's using that against you." "Of course he is. It's the oldest play in the book. Dig up old wounds, twist the narrative, make me look like the villain." She stood and walked to the window. "But here's the problem. My family won't defend me. If anything, they'll let this story run because it makes me look weak. So what's the play? We go public. Tell our side before Klein can spin this any further." She turned to face him. "I need you to set up a press conference tomorrow. I'm going to address this head on." Ethan hesitated. "You sure that's a good idea? Going public could make things worse." "Staying silent will definitely make things worse. At least this way, I control the narrative." The press conference was scheduled for 2 o'clock the following afternoon in the lobby of the Hale Capital building. By 1:30, the space was packed with reporters, cameras, and microphones. Ethan stood off to the side, watching Victoria prepare. She looked calm, composed, her posture perfect. But he'd been around her long enough now to see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers tapped against her thigh when she thought no one was looking. Rachel stood beside her, going over talking points one last time. "Stick to the facts. Don't let them bait you into saying something you'll regret. I know how to handle the press, Rachel." "I know you do, but this isn't a boardroom. These people will twist anything you say." Victoria nodded, then stepped up to the podium. The room went quiet. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice clear and steady. "I'm here to address the article published yesterday in Financial Insider. The allegations made against me are false. I did not steal proprietary information from Hale Industries. When I left that company, I did so with integrity and within the bounds of my employment contract. Everything I've built at Hale Capital has been earned through hard work, strategic thinking, and partnerships built on trust." A reporter raised her hand. "Ms. Hale, Can you explain why multiple senior staff members have left your firm in recent weeks? Personnel changes are a normal part of any business. Some people leave for better opportunities. That's their right. But I want to be clear. Hale Capital is strong, stable, and growing. We're not in crisis. We're under attack by competitors who see us as a threat. Another reporter spoke up. Are you referring to David Klein? I'm referring to anyone who thinks they can undermine this company through intimidation and misinformation. But they're going to fail. Because we don't break. The questions kept coming. Victoria fielded them with precision, never losing her composure, never giving them an opening. Ethan watched from the sidelines, impressed despite himself. She was good at this. Better than good. She made it look easy. But then Connor Hayes stood up. Ms. Hale, isn't it true that your father, Richard Hale, publicly disowned you after you left Hale Industries? Victoria's expression didn't change, but Ethan saw her hands tighten on the podium. My relationship with my family is personal and has no bearing on my professional capabilities. But it speaks to a pattern, doesn't it? You've burned bridges with your family, with former colleagues, with business partners. At what point do people start asking if the problem isn't them? It's you. The room went silent. Every camera was on Victoria. Ethan could feel the weight of the moment, the way it teetered on the edge of disaster. Victoria leaned into the microphone, her voice cold and precise. Mr. Hayes, I've built $1 billion company from the ground up. I've created jobs, generated returns for investors, and earned the respect of my peers. If people want to focus on personal drama instead of professional achievement, that says more about them than it does about me. Next question. Hayes sat down, but the damage was done. The press conference wrapped up 10 minutes later, and as the reporters filed out, Ethan could already see the headlines forming in his mind. Victoria's composure had been impressive, but Hayes had landed a hit, and in the world of public perception, that was all it took. Back in her office, Victoria stood at the window, her arms crossed. Rachel was on the phone with a PR firm, trying to do damage control. Ethan hovered near the door, unsure whether to stay or go. You did well, he said finally. Did I? Victoria turned to face him. Because it feels like I just gave them exactly what they wanted. You stood your ground. That counts for something. Not in this world. In this world, perception is everything. And right now, the perception is that I'm unstable, vindictive, and self-destructive. She sank into her chair, closing her eyes. I'm so tired, Ethan. I'm tired of fighting, tired of defending myself, tired of pretending I don't care what people think. Then stop pretending. She opened her eyes. What? Stop pretending. You're human. You're allowed to care. You're allowed to be tired. He stepped closer. But you can't give up. Not now. Not when we're this close to proving Klein's behind everything. And what if we can't prove it? What if he's too careful, too smart? What then? Then we find another way. But we don't quit. Victoria looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable in her eyes. Then she nodded. Okay. We keep fighting. That night, Ethan got home to find Maya waiting for him at the kitchen table. Her homework spread out in front of her. She looked up when he walked in, her face brightening. Daddy, you're home early. Yeah, kiddo. Thought I'd spend some time with you. He sat down across from her, helping her with math problems and spelling words. It felt normal, safe, a world away from press conferences and corporate warfare. For an hour, he let himself just be a dad. But when Maya went to bed, the weight came crashing back. He sat alone in the dark, thinking about Victoria's question. What if they couldn't prove it? What if Klein walked away clean and Victoria's reputation was destroyed? What happened to Ethan then? To Maya. His phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. Can you come back to the office? Something's happened. Ethan grabbed his jacket and headed out. When he arrived, the office was nearly empty except for Victoria, Rachel, and a man Ethan didn't recognize. The stranger was in his 40s, wearing a rumpled suit and holding a briefcase. Ethan, this is Peter Nguyen, Victoria said. He used to work for Klein. Nguyen nodded. I was Klein's head of finance until 3 months ago. He fired me when I refused to falsify some accounting records. And now you're here because, Ethan asked. Because I have proof, Nguyen said. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. Emails, financial records, recordings. Klein's been running a shell company to funnel money into attacks on his competitors. Victoria's not the first. She's just the most visible. Rachel flipped through the documents, her eyes widening. This is extensive. It's everything, Nguyen said. Bank transfers, communications with hired hackers, payments to journalists. It's all there. Victoria leaned back in her chair, processing. Why come to me now? Because Klein crossed a line. He threatened my family, told me if I ever talked, he'd make sure I never worked again. But I'm done being afraid. Nguyen looked at her. I want to help you take him down. And what do you want in return? Immunity. I was part of this, even if I didn't agree with it. I need protection from any legal fallout. Rachel looked at Victoria. I can work with the DA's office. If his information checks out, we can probably get him a deal. Victoria nodded slowly. All right, we'll verify everything. If it holds up, we move forward. Nguyen exhaled, relief washing over his face. Thank you. After he left, Victoria turned to Rachel. How long to verify? A few days, maybe a week. But if this is real, we've got him. Then let's make sure it's real. The next 72 hours were a whirlwind. Rachel's team worked around the clock, cross-referencing Nguyen's documents with public records, transaction histories, and communication logs. Ethan helped where he could, pulling files, making calls, running interference. Victoria barely slept. She lived in the office, subsisting on coffee and takeout. Her focus laser sharp. On the third day, Rachel called a meeting. It's real, she said, spreading the verified documents across the conference table. Every document Nguyen provided checks out. Bank transfers matched shell company accounts. Emails align with known dates and events. We've got enough to file charges for corporate espionage, fraud, and extortion. Victoria stared at the documents, her expression unreadable. So we take this to the DA? Yes. And we go public. The second we file, this becomes news. Klein's reputation will be shredded. Good. Victoria's voice was quiet, but there was steel beneath it. Let's do it. The charges were filed that afternoon. Within hours, news broke across every major financial outlet. David Klein, once considered a rising star in private equity, was now facing criminal charges. His firm's stock plummeted. Clients pulled out. Partners distanced themselves. It was a spectacular fall. Ethan watched the news coverage from his desk, feeling a strange mix of relief and unease. They'd won, but the cost had been high. Staff lost, reputation damaged, relationships destroyed, and somewhere in the back of his mind, he wondered if this was really over or just the beginning of something worse. That night, Victoria called him into her office. She was standing at the window, a glass of whiskey in her hand. She didn't turn when he walked in. We did it, she said. Yeah, we did. So why doesn't it feel like a victory? Ethan walked to the window and stood beside her. The city stretched out below, vast and indifferent. Because it costs too much, he said. Everything costs too much in this world. She took a sip of whiskey. But we survived. That's more than most people can say. Is it enough? She looked at him. What do you mean? I mean, is survival enough, or do you want something more? Victoria was quiet for a long time. Then she set down her glass. I don't know, she said. I've spent so long fighting just to stay alive, I forgot what it's like to want something else. Maybe it's time to figure that out. She smiled faintly. Maybe. They stood there in silence, the city lights flickering below. And for the first time since Ethan had met her, Victoria Hale looked like someone who might actually believe there was something worth fighting for beyond just survival. But the peace didn't last. 2 days later, Ethan got a call from Maya's school. The principal's voice was shaky, apologetic. Mr. Cole, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's been an incident. A man tried to pick up Maya today. He claimed to be a relative, but his name wasn't on the authorized list. Our security stopped him, but he became aggressive. We had to call the police. Ethan's blood ran cold. Is Maya okay? She's fine. She didn't even see him, but we wanted you to know. I'm on my way. He hung up and ran to Victoria's office. She was in a meeting, but he didn't care. He burst through the door. They went after Maya. Victoria stood immediately. What happened? Someone tried to take her from school. Security stopped him, but he couldn't finish the sentence. The fear was choking him. Go, now. I'll send the security team to meet you there." Ethan didn't wait. He grabbed his jacket and ran. By the time he reached the school, 2 plainclothes security guards were already there, along with a police officer taking a statement from the principal. Maya sat in the office, coloring, oblivious to the chaos around her. When she saw Ethan, her face lit up. "Daddy!" He scooped her into his arms, holding her tight. "You okay, baby?" "I'm okay." Mrs. Parker let me color. "That's good. That's really good." The police officer approached. "Mr. Cole, I'm Officer Daniels. We have a description of the man, but he left before we arrived. We'll review the security footage and see if we can identify him." "It's connected to the case," Ethan said. "The one against David Klein. He's retaliating." Daniels nodded. "We'll coordinate with the detectives handling that investigation. In the meantime, I'd recommend increasing security around your home and your daughter's school." "Already done," one of the security guards said. "Ms. Hale's orders." Ethan took Maya home, the security team following at a discreet distance. Once inside, he locked every door, checked every window, and sat on the edge of Maya's bed while she got ready for sleep. "Daddy, why are those people following us?" she asked. "They're just making sure we're safe." "Safe from what?" Ethan didn't know how to answer that. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that the world is full of people who would hurt her just to hurt him? "From anything bad," he said finally. "But you don't need to worry. I'm here, and I'm not going to let anything happen to you." Maya snuggled into her blankets. "Promise?" "Promise." Later that night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan sat in the kitchen with his head in his hands. His phone buzzed. Victoria. "How is she?" "She's fine. Scared me half to death, but she's fine." "I'm sorry, Ethan. I never wanted this to touch her. It's not your fault." "Isn't it? If you hadn't been working for me, then I'd still be loading boxes and barely making rent, and Maya would still be at risk from 100 other things I couldn't control. At least now I have resources, protection. That's because of you." There was a long pause. "Thank you," Victoria said quietly. "For what?" "For not blaming me. For staying. For everything. We're in this together, right?" "Yeah, we are." They hung up, and Ethan sat in the dark, thinking. He'd spent his whole life trying to protect Maya from the world. But maybe protection wasn't enough. Maybe what she needed was a father who was strong enough to change the world for her. And maybe, just maybe, Victoria Hale was the person who could help him do it. The man they arrested 2 days later wasn't someone Ethan recognized. His name was Derek Moss, a former private investigator with a record of harassment charges and restraining orders. According to Detective Ortiz, Moss had been hired through a third party to grab Maya from the school. He wasn't talking, but the money trail led back to one of Klein's shell companies. "We've got enough to add kidnapping conspiracy to the charges against Klein," Ortiz said, sitting across from Ethan and Victoria in the precinct interview room. "But I have to be honest with you. Prosecuting this is going to take time, months, maybe longer. And in the meantime, Klein's lawyer is going to fight every step of the way." "So he's still out there," Ethan said. "He's out on bail, yes, but he's being monitored. And we flagged his passport. He's not going anywhere." Victoria leaned forward. "Monitoring isn't enough. He already sent someone after a child. What's stopping him from trying again?" "We're doing everything we can, Ms. Hale." "That's not an answer," Ortiz sighed. "Look, I get it. You're scared, but we have protocols. Unless Klein violates his bail conditions, there's nothing more we can do right now." They left the precinct in silence. The town car was waiting at the curb, and they climbed in without speaking. Ethan stared out the window, watching the city blur past. His hands were shaking. He clenched them into fists, trying to steady himself, but the fear wouldn't leave. "I need to pull Maya out of school," he said finally. Victoria turned to him. "And put her where?" "I don't know. Somewhere safe. Somewhere Klein can't reach her." "There's nowhere like that, Ethan. If Klein wants to find her, he will. The only way to keep her safe is to end this." "And how do we do that?" "The police won't move, the DA's office is moving slow, and Klein's still out there planning his next move." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. "Rachel, it's me. I need you to set up a meeting tomorrow with Richard Hale." Ethan stared at her. "Your father?" She nodded, still on the phone. "Yes, my father. Tell him it's urgent. Tell him it's about the family name." She paused, listening. "I don't care if he doesn't want to see me. Make it happen. She hung up. Why are you calling your father? Ethan asked. Because he has something I need. Influence, connections, resources I can't access on my own. She looked at Ethan. Klein is attacking me because he thinks I'm isolated, that I don't have backup. But if my father stands with me, even publicly, it changes everything. Klein loses leverage. You really think your father will help you after everything you said about him? No, but I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. The meeting was set for the following afternoon at Richard Hale's estate in Medina, a sprawling compound overlooking Lake Washington. Ethan had never seen anything like it. The driveway alone was longer than the street he lived on. The house was all glass and stone, modern and cold, like a monument to wealth rather than a home. A butler met them at the door and led them through the house to a study lined with books and dark wood furniture. Richard Hale sat behind a massive desk, a man in his early 60s with steel-gray hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He didn't stand when they entered. Victoria, he said, his voice flat. It's been a while. 2 years, Victoria said, since your birthday party. The one where you told everyone I was a disappointment. I said you were reckless. There's a difference. Not to me. Richard's gaze shifted to Ethan. And who's this? Ethan Cole. He works for me. Does he speak? When I have something worth saying, Ethan said. Richard's mouth twitched, almost a smile. At least he's got a spine. Sit. They sat. Richard leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. Rachel said this was urgent. Something about the family name. So, talk. Victoria didn't waste time. She laid out everything. Klein's attacks, the leaked documents, the threats against her staff, the attempt to kidnap Maya. She spoke with precision, no emotion, just facts. When she finished, Richard was silent for a long moment. So you're here because you need my help, he said finally. I'm here because Klein is using the Hale name against me. He's telling investors, clients, the press, that I'm unstable because I walked away from this family. And you've let him. I haven't said a word about you in 2 years. Exactly. Your silence is an endorsement. Every time someone asks about me, you say nothing. And that nothing gets interpreted as disapproval, as validation that I'm the problem. Victoria leaned forward. I need you to make a statement, publicly, that you support Hale Capital, that what I've built is legitimate. Richard laughed, a short, bitter sound. You want me to lie? I want you to tell the truth, that I built a billion-dollar company without your help, that I earned everything I have, and that anyone who thinks they can tear me down by invoking the Hale name is going to have to go through you. And why would I do that? Because if I go down, the Hale name goes down with me. You think the press will distinguish between Hale Capital and Hale Industries? They won't. Every headline about me will mention you. Every scandal will reflect on this family. So either you help me end this, or you watch your legacy get dragged through the mud right alongside mine. Richard stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at Ethan. You've been quiet. What do you think? Ethan hesitated. I think she's right. And I think you know it. Do I? Yeah, because if you didn't, we wouldn't be here. You'd have thrown us out the second we walked in. Richard studied him for a moment, then turned back to Victoria. You've got guts, I'll give you that. Walking in here, asking for help after the things you said about me. I said you were controlling and manipulative. I stand by that. And yet here you are. Because this isn't about us. It's about stopping Klein before someone gets hurt. Richard stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. For a long time, he didn't speak. Then, finally, he turned. I'll make the statement, but on one condition. What condition? You come back to Hale Industries. Merge your firm with mine. We work together. Victoria's jaw tightened. No. Then we're done here. You can't seriously expect me to give up everything I've built. I'm offering you protection, resources, and the full weight of the Hale name. That's worth more than your pride. It's not about pride. It's about independence. I left because I didn't want to be your puppet. And look where that got you. Under attack, isolated, and desperate enough to come crawling back. Ethan saw the fury flash across Victoria's face. She stood, her voice ice cold. I'd rather lose everything than give you control. Then you're a fool. Victoria turned and walked toward the door. Ethan followed, but Richard's voice stopped them. You think you're strong because you walked away, but you're not. You're just stubborn. And stubbornness isn't strength, Victoria. It's weakness dressed up as conviction. Victoria didn't turn around. She kept walking. Ethan followed her out of the house, into the town car, and they drove away in silence. He could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped her knees. Are you okay? He asked. I'm fine. You don't look fine. I said I'm fine, Ethan. Her voice cracked on the last word. She took a breath, steadying herself. I knew he wouldn't help, not without strings. I thought maybe this time would be different. He's wrong, you know, what he said about stubbornness. Is he? Yeah. Walking away from that? From him trying to control you? That wasn't weakness. That was the strongest thing you could have done. Victoria looked at him, and for a moment her mask slipped. He saw the exhaustion, the fear, the weight of everything she'd been carrying. Then she looked away. I don't know what to do anymore, she said quietly. I thought if I fought hard enough, if I was smart enough, I could win. But it's not enough. It's never enough. So we find another way. There is no other way. Klein's out on bail, my father won't help, and the legal system is moving at a crawl. We're out of options. Then we make new ones. She looked at him again. How? I don't know yet, but we will. That night, Ethan lay awake in his apartment, Maya asleep in the next room. The security team was parked outside, a constant reminder that his daughter's safety hung by a thread. He thought about Victoria's question. How do they make new options when all the doors are closed? His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Pike Place Market tomorrow, 10 a.m. Come alone. PN. Peter Nguyen. Ethan deleted the text and tried to sleep, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. The next morning, he told the security team he was running errands and took the bus to Pike Place Market. The place was crowded with tourists and vendors, the air thick with the smell of fish and fresh flowers. He found Nguyen near the back, standing by a coffee cart, looking nervous. You came, Nguyen said. You said we needed to talk, so talk. Nguyen glanced around, then lowered his voice. Klein knows about the documents I gave you. I don't know how, but he knows. And he's planning something. What kind of something? I don't have details, but I overheard a call. He was talking to someone about final measures, said if the legal route didn't work, he'd handle it another way. Ethan's stomach dropped. Handle it how? I don't know, but whatever it is, it's happening soon, maybe days. You need to warn Victoria. Why are you telling me this? You already gave us everything you had. Nguyen looked at him, fear clear in his eyes. Because I'm scared. Klein's desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things, and if he goes down, he's taking everyone with him, including me. Ethan left the market and went straight to Hale Capital. He found Victoria in her office, reviewing documents with Rachel. We have a problem, he said. He told them about the meeting, about Nguyen's warning. Rachel's face went pale. If Klein's planning something outside the legal system, we need to involve the police, now. And tell them what? Victoria said. That a former employee overheard a vague phone call? That's not enough to act on. Then what do? We prepare, increase security, lock down our systems, and we wait. Wait for what? Ethan asked. For Klein to make his move, and when he does, we'll be ready. But they weren't ready. 3 days later, Ethan was at home with Maya when the call came. It was Jason, his voice shaking. Ethan, you need to get to the office, now. What happened? There's been a fire. The server room. Everything's gone. Ethan's blood ran cold. What do you mean, gone? The servers, the backups, everything. Someone set a fire, deliberately. We've lost all our data. Ethan grabbed his jacket. I'm on my way. He called the security team to stay with Maya, then ran to catch the bus. By the time he reached Hale Capital, fire trucks were still parked outside, and smoke was billowing from the upper floors. Victoria stood on the sidewalk, her face streaked with soot, watching the firefighters work. How bad? Ethan asked. Bad. The server room is destroyed. Years of data, client files, financial records, all gone. What about backups? They were in the same room. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were targeting. Rachel appeared, phone pressed to her ear. She hung up and turned to them. The fire marshal says it was arson. Accelerant was used. This was planned. Klein, Victoria said. We don't know that for sure. Who else would it be? Victoria's voice was sharp, cutting. He couldn't beat me legally, so he's burning me down. Literally. Ethan looked at the building, at the smoke still rising into the sky. This wasn't just an attack on Victoria's business. This was an attempt to erase everything she'd built, to reduce her to nothing. We need to fight back, he said. How? He's destroyed our records. Without data, we can't prove half our cases. Clients will walk, investors will panic. This is exactly what he wanted. Then we rebuild. Victoria laughed, a hollow, broken sound. Rebuild with what, Ethan? We've got nothing left. We've got each other, and we've got the truth. That's more than Klein has. She looked at him, tears forming in her eyes. I'm so tired of fighting. I know, but we can't stop now. For a long moment, they stood there on the sidewalk, the city moving around them, oblivious to the wreckage. Then Victoria wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. Okay, she said, we rebuild. The next 48 hours were chaos. Victoria worked with her IT team to recover what little data they could from off-site backups. Rachel filed emergency motions to preserve evidence in their case against Klein. Ethan coordinated with clients, reassuring them, buying time. It was exhausting, relentless work. But slowly, piece by piece, they started to put things back together. And then the breakthrough came. Detective Ortiz called Victoria personally. We've got him. Security footage from across the street shows Klein entering the building the night of the fire. He used a key card registered to one of his shell companies. We've got enough to arrest him for arson. Victoria closed her eyes, relief washing over her face. When? Officers are on their way to his house now. 2 hours later, the news broke. David Klein, arrested on charges of arson, corporate espionage, extortion, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. His firm collapsed within hours. Partners resigned, clients fled. The empire he'd built crumbled in a single day. Ethan watched the coverage from Victoria's office. She stood beside him, silent, her arms crossed. We won, he said. Did we? Klein's going to prison. His firm is finished. Yeah, we won. And what did we lose along the way? Ethan didn't have an answer for that. Because the truth was, they'd lost a lot. Staff, data, time, trust, and something else, something harder to name. A piece of themselves, maybe. The part that believed the world could be fair, but they'd survived, and that had to count for something. That night, Victoria invited Ethan to dinner. Not at a restaurant, at her apartment. He'd never been to her place before. It was in a high-rise downtown, all glass and steel, minimalist furniture and art that probably cost more than his annual salary. But it felt empty, cold, like no one actually lived there. I don't cook, Victoria said, pulling takeout containers from a bag. But I ordered from that Italian place you mentioned liking. They ate at her dining table, the city lights glowing outside the window. For a while, they didn't talk about work. They talked about Maya, about her favorite books, and her terrible knock-knock jokes. They talked about Ethan's life before Victoria, the jobs he'd worked, the struggles he'd faced. And slowly, Victoria started talking too. About her childhood. About the pressure to be perfect. About the loneliness that came with being Richard Hale's daughter. I've spent my whole life trying to prove I didn't need him, she said. And I still don't know if I've succeeded. You have, Ethan said. Look at what you've built. That's all you. But at what cost? She looked at him. I've pushed everyone away. I don't have friends. I don't have family. I just have this. She gestured vaguely at the apartment, at the city beyond. And some days I wonder if it's worth it. It is, Ethan said, because you're still here, still fighting, still trying to do the right thing. That matters. Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You're a better person than I am, Ethan. I don't know about that. I do. You've got something I don't. Hope. You believe things can get better. I stopped believing that a long time ago. Then maybe I can believe enough for both of us. She looked at him, and something shifted in the air between them. Something unspoken, but undeniable. For a moment, he thought she might say something, but then her phone buzzed, breaking the spell. She glanced at the screen. It's Rachel. Klein's arraignment is tomorrow. She wants to prep. You should take it, Victoria nodded and answered the call, stepping into the other room. Ethan sat alone at the table, staring out at the city. He thought about Victoria's question. What had they lost? And was it worth what they'd gained? He didn't know, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't walking away. Not now. Not ever. Klein's arraignment was standing room only. Reporters packed the courtroom, cameras lined the hallway outside, and the air buzzed with the kind of anticipation that comes when powerful people fall. Ethan sat in the gallery beside Rachel, watching as Klein was led in wearing an expensive suit that couldn't hide the fact that he was now just another defendant facing serious time. Victoria sat 2 rows ahead, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. When Klein's eyes found her across the courtroom, she didn't look away. She held his gaze, unflinching, until he was the one who broke contact. The judge read the charges: arson, corporate espionage, extortion, conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Each word landed like a hammer. Klein's lawyer entered a plea of not guilty, requested bail be continued, and launched into a speech about his client's standing in the community. The prosecutor countered with the severity of the crimes, the risk of flight, the danger to witnesses. The judge denied bail. Klein would await trial in custody. As the guards led him away, Ethan saw something flicker across the man's face. Not anger, not defiance. Fear. Real, honest fear. The kind that comes when you realize you've lost everything and there's no way back. Outside the courthouse, Victoria gave a brief statement to the press. She was calm, professional, thanking law enforcement and promising that Hale Capital would continue to serve its clients with integrity. She didn't gloat, didn't celebrate. She just stated facts and walked away. In the town car afterward, she finally let herself breathe. "It's over," Rachel said. "He's done. Even if he beats some of the charges, the arson alone is going to put him away for years." "It's not over until the verdict," Victoria said. "But yeah, we're close." Ethan looked at her. "How do you feel?" "Tired, relieved, angry that it had to get this far." She leaned back against the seat. "But mostly I just feel empty. Like I've been running for so long, I forgot what it's like to stand still. Then maybe it's time to stand still for a while." She smiled faintly. Maybe. But standing still wasn't something Victoria Hale knew how to do. Over the next 2 weeks, she threw herself into rebuilding. New servers were installed. Lost data was painstakingly reconstructed from old emails, paper records, and client correspondence. Staff who'd left were replaced with fresh talent. Slowly, deliberately, Hale Capital began to stabilize. Ethan watched her work with a mix of admiration and concern. She was brilliant, relentless, unstoppable. But she was also exhausted. He could see it in the way she rubbed her temples during long meetings, in the way her coffee consumption had doubled, in the way she stayed at the office until midnight most nights. One evening, he stayed late too. When everyone else had gone home, he knocked on her office door. "Come in," she called. He found her at her desk, surrounded by documents, her hair pulled back in a messy knot that was nothing like her usual polished appearance. "You need to go home," he said. "I will. In a bit." "Victoria, it's 11 o'clock. You've been here since 6 this morning." "I'm fine." "You keep saying that, but you're not." She looked up at him, irritation flashing in her eyes. "What do you want me to say, Ethan? That I'm exhausted? That I'm scared this whole thing could still fall apart?" "Fine. I'm exhausted. I'm scared, but I can't stop. Because the second I stop, everything I've built could collapse." "It won't collapse. You've got good people, systems in place. You don't have to carry it all yourself." "Yes, I do. That's what it means to be in charge. The weight falls on you. Always." Ethan walked to her desk and leaned against it. "You know what I've learned working for you? That strength isn't about carrying everything alone. It's about knowing when to let other people help." "Is that what you think I'm doing? Refusing help?" "Yeah. I think you've spent so long proving you don't need anyone that you've forgotten how to let people in." Victoria stood, her voice rising. "I let you in. I trusted you when I had no reason to. I gave you a job, brought you into my world, put my faith in you. What more do you want? I want you to stop treating this like a transaction. I'm not here because you pay me. I'm here because I believe in what you're doing, because I believe in you. But you've got to meet me halfway. You've got to let yourself be human." She stared at him, anger and something else. something vulnerable, warring in her expression. Then she sank back into her chair, the fight draining out of her. "I don't know how to do that," she said quietly. "I've been in survival mode for so long, I don't know what it's like to just be." Ethan pulled up a chair and sat across from her. "Then let's figure it out together." For a long moment, they sat in silence. Then Victoria reached across the desk and took his hand. It was a small gesture, almost hesitant, but it was real. "Thank you," she said, "for not giving up on me." "I'm not going anywhere." She squeezed his hand, then let go and stood. "Come on, let's get out of here." "Where are we going?" "I don't know. Somewhere that's not here." They ended up at a diner near the waterfront, the kind of place that served greasy food and watered-down coffee and didn't care who you were or how much money you had. They sat in a booth by the window, watching the ferries cross the dark water, and talked about nothing important. Favorite movies, worst jobs, childhood memories. The kind of conversation that didn't have an agenda or a goal, that just existed for its own sake. And for the first time since Ethan had met her, Victoria looked like someone who might actually be happy. The trial began 6 weeks later. It stretched over 3 weeks of testimony, evidence, and legal maneuvering. Ethan attended when he could, sitting in the gallery with Maya's school schedule rearranged so he could be there for the important moments. He watched Peter Nguyen take the stand and lay out Klein's crimes with devastating precision. He watched the prosecution present emails, financial records, security footage. He watched Klein's defense try to poke holes in the case and fail over and over. And he watched Victoria sit through all of it with a composure that never wavered. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, the courtroom was silent, guilty on all counts. The judge set sentencing for 4 weeks later. Klein would face up to 20 years in prison. His firm was dissolved, his assets frozen, his reputation destroyed. It was a total, unequivocal fall. Outside the courthouse, Victoria didn't make a statement. She just walked to the town car with Rachel and Ethan and got in. As they pulled away from the curb, she finally spoke. "It's really over." "Yeah," Rachel said. "It is." Victoria nodded slowly, processing. Then she turned to Ethan. "Take the rest of the day off. Go be with Maya. You've earned it." "What about you?" "I'll be fine. I just need some time to think." He wanted to argue, but he could see she needed space. So he nodded and got out at the next light, catching a bus back to Maya's school. When he picked her up that afternoon, she was bubbling with excitement about an art project she'd made, a drawing of the two of them holding hands under a rainbow. "Do you like it, Daddy?" "I love it, kiddo. It's perfect." "Can we put it on the fridge?" "Absolutely." That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan sat on the couch with the drawing in his hands. He thought about everything that had happened over the past few months. The chaos, the fear, the fights, but also the growth, the connections. The realization that maybe he was capable of more than he'd ever given himself credit for. His phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. "Can you come over? I need to talk to you." He arranged for the security team to stay with Maya and headed to Victoria's apartment. When she opened the door, she looked different, softer. Her hair was down, and she was wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual tailored suits. "Thanks for coming," she said. "Of course. What's going on?" She led him to the living room and gestured for him to sit. She stood by the window for a moment, gathering her thoughts, then turned to face him. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since the verdict. About what I want. About what actually matters." She paused. "And I realized something. This company, this life I've built, it's impressive, it's successful, but it's also lonely, and I don't want to be lonely anymore." Ethan's heart was pounding, but he kept his voice steady. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to change things. Not just at the company, in my life. I want to make space for people who matter, for relationships that aren't just transactional." She looked at him. "For you, and for Maya." "Victoria, I know it's complicated. I know I'm not easy to be around. I'm demanding and stubborn, and I don't always know how to show what I'm feeling. But I care about you, Ethan, more than I've cared about anyone in a long time. And I want to see where this could go, if you're willing." Ethan stood, closing the distance between them. "I'm willing, but I need you to understand something. Maya comes first. Always. If this is going to work, you have to be okay with that." "I am. I want to be part of her life too, if she'll have me." "She will. She already asks about you." Victoria smiled, and it was genuine, warm, nothing like the controlled expressions she wore in boardrooms. "Then let's try. No more walls, no more keeping each other at arm's length. Let's just see what happens." Ethan kissed her. It wasn't smooth or cinematic. It was awkward and tentative and real, but it was theirs. Over the next few months, things shifted. Victoria made a conscious effort to leave the office earlier, to take weekends off, to be present. She started coming to Maya's school events, parent-teacher conferences, art shows, the spring talent show where Maya sang a wobbly version of a pop song that made everyone smile. At first, Maya was shy around her, but Victoria was patient, showing up consistently, bringing small gifts, asking questions, and actually listening to the answers. Slowly, Maya warmed up to her. One Saturday afternoon, the three of them went to the park. Maya ran ahead to the playground while Ethan and Victoria sat on a bench, watching her climb and swing and laugh. "She's incredible," Victoria said. "Yeah, she is." "Do you ever worry you're not enough for her?" Ethan looked at her, surprised by the vulnerability in the question. "Every single day. But then I remember that being enough isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, being present, loving her even when I'm tired or scared or don't know what I'm doing." "I think that's true for all relationships," Victoria said quietly. "Not just parents and kids." "Yeah, I think you're right." At the office, things were changing too. Victoria hired a COO to handle day-to-day operations, freeing her up to focus on strategy and big-picture decisions. She started delegating more, trusting her team, letting go of the need to control every detail. It wasn't easy. She still had moments where she tried to micromanage or second-guess people, but she was learning. Ethan took on more responsibility too. He wasn't just a coordinator anymore. He became Victoria's strategic partner, the person she bounced ideas off, the one who pushed back when she was wrong and supported her when she was right. They made a good team, better than good. 6 months after Klein's conviction, Victoria called a company-wide meeting. Everyone gathered in the main conference room, curious and slightly nervous. She stood at the front, looking out at the faces of the people who'd stayed, who'd fought alongside her, who'd refused to abandon ship when things got hard. "I want to start by thanking you," she began. "This year has been brutal. We've faced attacks, losses, setbacks that could have destroyed us. But we didn't break, we adapted, we fought back, and we came out stronger. That's because of you, all of you." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But I also want to acknowledge something I should have said a long time ago. I haven't always been the easiest person to work for. I've pushed too hard, demanded too much, and sometimes I've forgotten that you're people, not just employees. I'm sorry for that, and I'm going to do better." There was a moment of stunned silence. Then someone started clapping. Within seconds, the whole room was applauding. Not because she'd given them something, but because she'd been honest, vulnerable, real. After the meeting, Jason approached Ethan. "Is she okay?" "That was not what I expected." "She's better than okay," Ethan said. "She's finally figuring out what actually matters." That night, Victoria invited Ethan and Maya to dinner at her apartment. She'd actually cooked, or tried to. The pasta was slightly overcooked and the sauce was from a jar, but she'd set the table with care and even bought flowers for the centerpiece. Maya was delighted. "You made dinner!" "I did. It's not fancy, but I hope you like it." They ate together, the three of them, talking and laughing and making plans for the weekend. And as Ethan watched Maya tell Victoria about her upcoming field trip, as he saw the way Victoria listened with genuine interest, he felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was life. Real, messy, imperfect life. And it was good. After dinner, Maya fell asleep on the couch, curled up with her stuffed rabbit. Ethan carried her to Victoria's guest room and tucked her in, then returned to find Victoria cleaning up the kitchen. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know, but I want to." She smiled at him. "Thank you for being here, for bringing Maya. This means a lot to me." "It means a lot to us too." They stood together in the kitchen, washing dishes and putting away leftovers, and it felt so normal, so ordinary. And that's what made it extraordinary. A few weeks later, Ethan got a call from an unexpected source. His phone rang, and when he answered, he heard a voice he hadn't heard in years. "Ethan, it's Claire." His stomach dropped. Claire. Maya's mother. The woman who'd walked out 6 years ago and never looked back. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice cold. "I heard about you. About your new job. About the woman you're seeing. I wanted to talk." "There's nothing to talk about." "Please, Ethan, I know I don't have the right to ask, but I need to explain." "You had 6 years to explain. You chose not to. Maya doesn't need you. I don't need you. We're doing fine." "I made a mistake." "Yeah, you did. And you don't get to come back now that things are working out. You don't get to rewrite history." He took a breath, forcing himself to stay calm. "Don't call again. Don't contact Maya. You made your choice. Live with it." He hung up before she could respond. His hands were shaking. He sat down on the edge of his bed, trying to process the surge of anger and old pain. Then his phone buzzed again. This time it was Victoria. "You okay? You sound upset." Maya's mom called. There was a pause. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Yeah, can I come over?" "I'll be here." He called the security team to watch Maya and went to Victoria's apartment. When she opened the door, she didn't ask questions. She just pulled him inside, sat him down on the couch, and listened as he told her everything. About Claire, about the abandonment, about the anger he'd carried for years. "I don't want Maya to ever feel like she wasn't enough," he said. "Like she did something wrong. She won't. Because she has you. And you're showing her every day that she's loved, valued, and wanted. That's what matters." "What if Claire tries to come back? What if she fights for custody?" "Then we'll deal with it. Together. You're not alone in this, Ethan. Not anymore." He looked at her, this woman who'd started as a stranger in a wrecked car and had somehow become the person he trusted most in the world. "I love you," he said. It was the first time he'd said it out loud. Victoria's eyes widened, then softened. "I love you too." They held each other in the quiet of her apartment, and Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because he wasn't carrying the weight alone anymore. A year after Klein's conviction, Hale Capital held its annual investor gala. It was a black tie event at a downtown hotel, attended by clients, partners, and industry leaders. Ethan stood near the bar in a rented tux, watching Victoria work the room. She was in her element, charming investors, closing deals, commanding attention. But every so often, she'd glance over at him and smile. A real smile, just for him. Later in the evening, she took the stage to give a speech. The room quieted. A year ago, this company faced its darkest moment. We were attacked, undermined, and nearly destroyed. But we survived. And we didn't just survive, we thrived. We grew stronger, smarter, more resilient. And that's because of the people in this room, the ones who stayed, the ones who fought, the ones who believed. She paused, her gaze finding Ethan in the crowd. "But I also learned something this year. Success isn't just about numbers or deals or winning. It's about the people you choose to stand beside, the ones who challenge you, support you, and remind you what actually matters. I'm grateful for those people, and I'm grateful for this company. But most of all, I'm grateful for the chance to build something that's about more than just power. It's about purpose, and that's a legacy worth fighting for." The room erupted in applause. Victoria stepped down from the stage and made her way through the crowd to Ethan. "That was a hell of a speech," he said. "I meant every word." "I know." Later that night, after the gala ended, they drove to Ethan's apartment to pick up Maya. She was staying with Mrs. Chen's replacement, a kind college student named Amy, who needed the extra income. When they arrived, Maya ran to the door, still wearing her pajamas. "Did you have fun at the fancy party?" she asked. "We did," Victoria said. "But it's more fun being here with you." Maya grinned and hugged her. Victoria hugged her back, and Ethan saw tears in her eyes. Happy tears. They went inside, the three of them, and sat on the couch together. Maya snuggled between them, yawning, her eyes already drooping. "Daddy?" she said sleepily. "Yeah, baby? Are we a family now, all of us?" Ethan looked at Victoria. She looked back at him, and he saw everything he needed to know in her eyes. "Yeah, kiddo," he said. "We're a family." Maya smiled and closed her eyes, content. And as Ethan sat there with his daughter on one side and Victoria on the other, he realized something. He'd spent so long trying to survive, to protect, to keep moving forward. But somewhere along the way, he'd stopped just surviving. He'd started living, really living. And it wasn't perfect. It never would be. There would be hard days, fights, setbacks, but they'd face them together, as a family, imperfect, messy, and real. A few months later, Victoria made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She stepped down as CEO of Hale Capital and appointed her COO to take over. She stayed on as board chair, but she was done with the day-to-day grind, done with the 18-hour days and the constant pressure. She wanted to live, to be present, to build a life that was about more than just winning. Ethan stayed at the company too, but in a different capacity. He became head of operations, a role that let him use everything he'd learned while still having time for Maya, time for Victoria, time for himself. They moved in together, not into Victoria's sterile high-rise apartment, but into a house in the suburbs with a yard where Maya could play and a kitchen where they could cook together in rooms that actually felt like home. It wasn't the life Ethan had imagined for himself standing in that rainy intersection 2 years ago. It was better, messier, more complicated, more real, but better. One evening, as they sat on the back porch watching Maya chase fireflies in the yard, Victoria leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked, "when you pulled me out of the car?" "Sometimes. I was so angry at you for breaking my window, for getting involved. I wanted to handle it myself." "I know. I'm glad you didn't listen to me," Ethan smiled. "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky darken and the stars come out. Maya ran up to the porch, breathless and grinning, holding a jar with 3 fireflies inside. "Look what I caught! That's amazing," Victoria said. "What are you going to name them?" Maya thought for a moment. "Hope, Love, and Lucky." "Oh, Love and Lucky. Those are perfect names." Maya beamed and ran back into the yard, and Ethan felt his chest tighten with something that felt almost too big to hold. Gratitude, joy, love. "You know what the best part is?" he said to Victoria. "What?" "This, right here. Not the money or the success or any of that. Just this. Being here with you and Maya. That's what I fought for. That's what it was all for." Victoria lifted her head and kissed him. "Me too." And as they sat there together, watching their daughter play under a sky full of stars, Ethan realized that sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't to stand alone. It's to let someone stand beside you, to build something together, to choose love over fear, connection over isolation, and hope over survival. Because in the end, that's what life is really about. Not power or wealth or winning, but the people you choose, the moments you share, the family you build from broken pieces and second chances. And that was more than enough.